Aloha and good evening, everybody. I figured since it's such a small spot, we don't need the audio. Everybody's got a loud voice. I know Jim's not a shy guy, so I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is the first of our Let's Talk Story sessions. It's basically a continuation of the beer summits. We're doing, with a different name. The goal is to bring in a different subject matter expert every month to talk about issues that you want to talk about. It's going to be presentation, and then we're going to talk story. It's going to just open question, talk story session. I want to thank everybody again for coming. Jim Kelly and his team. And turn time over to Jim.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much, Rep. Thanks. I really appreciate it. I do these things now and then, and some of them are very formal and got a presentation with 50 slides and that kind of thing, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to spare all of you that. We're going to just, I'm going to talk about a few things going on in Hawaii Kai and some of this. Did anybody go to the town hall that we had in June? We had, okay, great. So some of you heard then what kind of what was going on, but I'm glad we got some new folks here. It'll take me about 40 minutes to cover all the material that we went over back in June, so you're gonna have to sit through that again, and then we'll, oh, come on, just kidding. These are the jokes, folks. This is right here. So, no, we'll skim right over that. I don't have a presentation per se. I do have some stuff that I hope after we're done talking, you can come up and take a look at it, because I want to talk about some of the work that we've been doing out here, and some of you may have seen it over the last couple of months, and even just last week we were doing some work up at Portlock, up behind the houses there, doing some tree trimming. We've actually been doing a lot of replacing of poles and replacing of underground equipment. So a lot of that work is continuing and going to go into 2026. So you'll see our guys around. You also see we hire contractors to do some of this work. So the work is continuing. We haven't had any outages out here recently, right? Not too, it's been okay. I know we still have some issues, and this is one of the things we talked about back in June. Was one of the great things, or one of the big appealing parts of living in Hawaii Kai is underground utilities, right? You don't have to see those poles, no telecom lines or boxes or anything like that. But the bummer about underground utilities is that they're underground, and most of the houses here were built, probably the majority are starting in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so that's how old the utilities are too. Especially in the older sections of Hawaii Kai, but now, the 80s are now 40 years ago, which kind of blows my mind. So the 80s are pretty far in the rearview mirror now too. And so there's a lot of utilities that were put in then. And back then, they just took a conduit and they dropped it in the ground. That was what we call direct buried cable. So it just they had a ditch on the side of the road, and they put the electric line in, and they put the telephone line in, and that was it. They covered it up with dirt, and then so over time, things happen. They get moisture, the insulation on the conduit gets brittle, it cracks, more water gets in. So the challenge when there's an outage is, in a neighborhood where you got overhead poles, trouble man can come in his truck and look around and say, okay, I can see there's a line down there, or I can see there's a fuse out in that transformer, and pretty quickly figure out what the problem is, get up in his truck, fix it, and then can't do that with underground. It's harder, it takes longer. It's not impossible, it just takes longer for them to test to figure out, okay, where is the problem here? I gotta go up the street and they gotta test. And probably a lot of you have what we call, manholes are the big things in the street. You guys probably see in the sidewalk what we call hand holes, which are those little boxes as you're walking along on the sidewalk, and they're not very deep, they're pretty shallow, but you take the cover off of there, and that's what the guys have to do. They gotta open that up and then test it, see, okay, am I getting current through here? No, I'm not. And I got to go down to the next one, okay, and see. So they got to track it down, and it usually just takes longer. And that's again, the bummer about underground utilities. I'm not saying that it's not good, but like everything, there's a trade-off. And so now most of Oahu has what we call redundant circuits, meaning that if the lights go out in a particular neighborhood, we can usually switch to a secondary circuit and most of the neighborhood will come back on. You see from my handy map here, and you guys can come up and look at this after. I'll start talking about a little bit, just some background on how Hawaii Kai gets its electricity. And it's not how you would think it would be. And honestly, if we were designing it in 2025 instead of 1955, which is when it was first laid out, we'd definitely do it a different way. But what we have here is a setup that they developed back in the 1950s when they were first just starting to think about, okay, Henry Kaiser, and they're really looking at doing a big development in Hawaii Kai. So how do we get electricity out there from where we make the electricity? And back then we had 3 primary power plants. We had the one, remember the one, well, it's still there, downtown Honolulu, right on the waterfront. I mean, that's the oldest one. That's where Hawaiian Electric started, actually, back like around 1900 was when that plant was built. And that plant was back, it was on, we used it until 2014, and then we shut it down, but it's still there. The Waiau power plant, the one out on Pearl Harbor, when you go around the corner on H1, you see that there. And then out at on the west side, Kahe power plant. So those are the 3 primary power plants delivering electricity to the island. And today, of course, we got a lot of other things going on. We got the H power plant, you got a lot of big solar projects, so it's all feeding together. But how does that electricity get out here? Well, you'd think, well, it goes down Kalaniana-Ole Highway, right? It runs straight out here. No, it does not. It should have, and if they were thinking about it, but back in the day, what was that, like a 2-lane dirt path back in the old days? So they weren't even thinking about it like that. What they did have, because Kailua and Kaneohe were developed earlier than Hawaii Kai. So starting in the, late 40s, they were starting to, and they're talking about getting the poly built and the tunnels. And so they were starting to build homes over in Kailua. They knew that was going to be an area where there was going to be a lot of development. And so Hawaiian Electric fed the windward side of Oahu before it even started fooling around down here. So there are, the transmission lines run from Waiau and from the west side over the Ko'olau. And you can see when you drive around, you can see some of those towers way up on the top of the Ko'olau. And so it then dropped down to Kailua, Waimanalo over on that side. So they had that infrastructure already in place. So some genius engineer at Hawaiian Electric said, hey, we're already sending stuff over that side over there. Why don't we just run some lines and then have them come back over this way to feed what will someday be this fabulous place we call Hawaii Kai, because we've already got the transmission infrastructure going over that way. So all we have to do is set up a transmission line that kind of runs right along the base of the mountain there, and then shoot right over, good to go, right? Well, yeah, it probably was the most efficient thing to do back in 1955. And as more energy was demanded on this side of the mountain, additional transmission lines and substations. There's 4 substations that serve Hawaii Kai. Ahi, Koapa, Camilo Iki, and Queens is the last to be put in over there. But the lines come over the mountain. They run along the bottom of the Ko'olau, and then they come over the top. And that's where the electricity comes from, which is great as long as no tree branch or anything falls down and knocks over all of this stuff. And I've literally seen pictures from the 50s and 60s where you can look and it's like a freeway. It's clear, and there's 2 transmission lines running all along there. It's just ground cover. There's no trees, there's no shade. It's just running right along there, and you can very clearly make it out running along the bottom of the ridge there. Today, if you look at Google Earth today, it's all broccoli, right? You can't see anything. It's all mostly albizia that have grown over it. You can't see hardly any evidence that there are transmission lines running along the bottom there until they pop out and then they come up over the top. So we have a real challenge in trying to keep those corridors free from trees falling down and branches breaking off. You know, albizia, they're really brittle and they grow back. And that's all DLNR land back there. We have a good relationship with DLNR. And so we can get in there, if something's broken, we can get in there and fix it. But some of the larger outages that we've had in Hawaii Kai, especially the last couple of years, have been because of issues back along here with the power coming over the ko'olau. And we can usually, again, we could put somebody on a backup circuit sometimes, but there's only 2 lines that run over the ko'olaus. They run together. So if one of them goes down, okay, you still got the one. But we've had a situation where a tree has come down and taken out both lines. And it takes a lot to get our guys back in there, really hard to access it. They have to, a lot of times they gotta literally walk in with the equipment. They gotta use if a pole has come down, they gotta use a helicopter to go in there. So again, if we were designing it today, this is not how we would design it. But when we've had some of the larger outages, that's what's going on there. And I just want to, I think it helps sometimes for people to understand. They don't know why it takes so long to get the power back on or why it keeps happening. We are really putting a priority to, again, trying to clear this, the vegetation back there as much as we can, but it's, you know, it's tough work. It's super expensive. I mean, we spend tens of millions of dollars a year just trying to keep up with the stuff that grows back. Everything's supposed to get trimmed every 3 years, but, and lately, because of, after the wildfire, we've really been putting our resources into going in the areas where there is a much higher risk of wildfire. So we've been putting most of our resources into those areas. You know, luckily this is not considered a high risk wildfire area. It's called Tier 2. Tier 1 is like on the west side, on the leeward side, where it's very dry out there, and you know, there's a lot of dry grass and brush, so that's considered a much higher risk area than we have here. But this work that I'm going to talk about in a minute, we had the fire in August 2023 in Lahaina. It changed how we looked at our maintenance work and our vegetation management work. It made us prioritize for most of 2024, really going into the areas that were at highest risk for a line falling down and starting a fire. Got most of that work done in 2024 and first half of 2025. This year, we've started focusing on the Tier 2 areas, and Hawaii Kai is a Tier 2 area. So the risk isn't seen as high, but there is still a risk. We don't want power lines running through trees. We don't want power lines over areas where if they fell down, they could start a fire. So that's been our emphasis the last half of this year. And then after this year, we're going to start moving into Tier 3 areas, which are even lower risk, but still there is a risk. And so we want to make sure that we're really working. Right now, if you head up to the North Shore along Kamehameha Highway, you'll probably be tearing your hair out because our trucks have been out there for the last couple of weeks trimming all the trees. You know, you see when you're driving along, it's like, wow, look at those lines, they're right in the trees. They've been cutting back those lines along the road for the last couple of weeks. I think they're going to go through to the end of November. So there's been issues with it, but it's work we got to get done. I do want to say something about lines and trees. So it's my show. I don't have to share the stage with Hawaiian Telecom. So I'm just going to say it right out there. You're driving around and sometimes you see these poles and they're leaning down and there's lines that are like really low or dragging on the ground. How many people have seen that kind of stuff? Yeah, there's a lot of it around. those are telecom lines. Those are telecommunication lines. It's for the phone and for cable. And so it's not carrying high voltage electricity. So, I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody to touch anybody's line. You know, I wouldn't mess with any of that stuff if I was walking around and saw it. But we take care of our stuff. They take care of their stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's up to them to make the choices about where they do their work. And we try to work closely with them. But I just want to make sure when people see lines, so we get a lot of calls like, you know, I drive by this every day, there's lines on the ground, the poles hanging over, and you guys are going to start a fire. And it's not our equipment. I know that sounds lame to say that, but it isn't. It's the other company, and it's their responsibility to take care of it. So we just don't want people thinking that there's honest to God, if there was given what happened a couple of years ago, I mean, if there's a line down or there's sparking or anybody sees something like that, you got to call 911 right away, and we're going to have somebody out there to take care of it just like that. I mean, it is a huge, huge risk for our company as well as for the community. We take it very seriously, so that's why we're doing this work, and that's why if there's any issues that people see and it gets reported, we take care of it right away, because we don't want to have any kind of another horrible tragedy like we saw in Lahaina. So yeah, let's any questions so far? I mean, jump in. Yes. Yes.
For previous year's summit. My question is around, like, I want to move back to the previous point in your conversation. So my neighbor, I won't mention his name, okay, is putting in irrigation, puts a shovel on the ground, okay. So
Okay.
it's pretty close to the surface. What percentage of Hawaii Kai is vulnerable like that?
What do you mean? That it's
Trying to get a concept of how much work needs to be done, or would you like to do? Do you have the funding for it to resolve these issues? Because
well, you mean like if somebody?
There a line near the surface.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing about. So if you were building a house from scratch today, or if somebody's building a development today, there's lots of new code about underground utility that didn't exist back then. You have to, first of all, you got to pour concrete and make kind of a trough out of that. And then the conduit goes inside what's called a duct, which is like a hard plastic thing that runs through. So if a guy hits it with the shovel, he's not going to do exactly that. Most of the stuff, or I don't want to say most, it's supposed to be buried deeper now than it was back then too. I don't know how deep it is. So I hope stuff isn't too close to the surface, but
there's a number the community can call, and the contractors who you've subbed to come out and will tell you where all of your utilities are.
yeah, before, yeah, that's
Yes,
the,
I definitely asked him to do that.
yeah,
It's
the 811.
what you're doing, I don't
Yeah,
know.
no,
Yeah.
so there is, and they come out within minutes sometimes. The day of, you can call and say, hey, something.
Oh, absolutely. No, my question's more around, do you have the funding to perform the upgrades you're describing? Do you have plans to do these?
Well, yeah, long term, and look, we're all friends here, right? I mean, I want to be really clear. Every year when we plan our budgets for the work that we're going to do, we got to make choices. And the last couple of years and going forward, our choices have been very focused on safety. Not that they weren't before, but that basically beats everything else in terms. So if it's a question of work that was probably going to be done over the next 5 to 10 years, that's probably going to get moved out. We did replace a lot of the underground equipment in Kalama Valley.
Oh, yes, thank you. You fixed some big problems.
Yeah, but that was a long-term project, and it took, it was something that had been budgeted for some time. They did a lot of the work out there, and that's the idea we would do with every area. But it isn't just Hawaii Kai; it's Mililani. It's also areas that were all kind of developed around the same time. They all have the same issues, and unfortunately, the way we decide how we prioritize our work is we literally look at, okay, what are the worst performing circuits that we have on our system? What are the ones that have the most outages, but also the ones that have the outages of longest duration? Because it's one thing to have an outage, but if it goes back on pretty fast, that's one thing. If you're getting a bunch of outages of long duration, those are ones that are gonna move up higher on the list. If it's just a case of, well, this neighborhood's getting old, it's 50, 60 years old, and we should probably replace it at some point, but there haven't been a lot of outages, then that's gonna be lower on the list. So does that give you a sense of, is that evasive enough?
Are you hampered by having to make payouts to the settlement? Is money going from these kind of projects?
No, and I'm really glad you asked that question. So there's not a penny from Hawaiian Electric customers that's going to the settlement. Zero, nothing. The money is coming from the shareholders of Hawaiian Electric Industries, which is our parent company. They're paying for the whole bit, $2 billion, and it'll be paid out over the next 4 years. Really want to make sure people understand that. I see on social media, oh, I see my bill went up, I guess they're paying for Lahaina. No, there's no money coming from Hawaiian Electric customers to pay for the settlement in Lahaina. Our CEO is committed to that publicly numerous times. It isn't something that's going to get the rug pulled out from everybody in a couple of years. We have a financing plan, or our parent company does, for how they're going to pay that over 4 years. And I think it's really important for people to know that. And if they ask you that, that's not the case. But we're reprioritizing a lot of the work that we do, again, to emphasize safety and resilience, and that's what always is going to be at the top of the list.
Are you comfortable that you have the staffing level necessary to keep up with?
We have the number of positions in the company that we need to have. What we don't have is experienced, capable people that can take those jobs. We've lost a lot of our line crews to California over the last several years. They pay $50,000 signing bonuses. They pay $50,000 housing stipends. PG&E in particular, after they had their issues with the fires, they basically just went and swept up every experienced utility lineman, troubleshooter, planner, engineer they could get their hands on. And we literally have lost more than a few, especially on the neighbor islands where it's very expensive to live. So a lot of them, I think, they figure, you know what, I'm going to go over to, and they get paid gobs of overtime. So I'm going to go to PG&E and live in Fresno in a trailer for 4 years, and I'm going to make a ton of money, and then I'm going to come back to my family. And maybe I'll even get my old job back at HECO. Yes?
Thank you for answering.
You're welcome.
Two things. One, I just want to pitch that having Firewise Communities help HECO.
Yep.
In Camilla Valley, you do have an easement, and I'm part of the group that maintains part of that easement from a Firewise standpoint, and that's through Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. But the other thing I want to speak to you about is I really appreciate your talking about safety and resiliency. And so what can we do to help you get the state off your back about that 2045 energy statement that they made about being
100% renewable and decarbonized.
Now, the reason I have to ask this is because it's not fair to you, to HECO, to be able to focus on resiliency and also safety and bring up the grid. You didn't anticipate the fire in Lahaina, and yet there's still applying pressure, and I don't think people are aware of that, and I want that to be known, because I understand now that they're pressuring you to put out an RFP for ocean energy. They will be asking you to put out an RFP for ocean energy, and the ocean energy planned right now would be out this way, and it would be between here and Molokai.
You're talking about offshore wind?
Offshore wind.
Yeah, offshore wind.
Correct, offshore wind.
I think I said at the last meeting afterward, I mean, of the 11 or 1,200 things you want to worry about in your life right now, I would put offshore wind at probably number 1,223.
But is the state pressuring you?
No, the state is not pressuring us. And yes, is this related to that, or should I finish that up? Okay.
I would like
Yes.
Very interesting because, first of all, I'm not opposed to liquefied natural gas, but I thought it was interesting that the announcement came out today that the governor signed that agreement with Japan. And how does that turn things around for HECO's plans, and does that take the pressure off this 2045 deadline for renewable energy that the state has put on HECO, and which is, we all know that 2045 deadline is not going to eventuate in 100% renewables. So how does that turn the whole conversation around? And I know that this is a big question for you, and I don't expect a 100% answer that's going to eventuate in what happens, but can you at least start the conversation about that from your perspective? How do you envision this conversation leading HECO in the state down the road?
No, thank you very much for both of those questions. I knew there was a reason I wanted to come out here tonight, Joe, because at the town hall in June, it's the only time of these meetings that I've been at, I've actually had people say, hey, you know, we feel sorry for Hawaiian Electric. You got to get these guys off your back. So thank you. It's a great, doesn't happen very often. So thank you for that. Talk about a couple things. Yeah, offshore wind. I mean, there's huge changes on the federal energy policy front, which starts in the Oval Office, and the guy there doesn't like offshore wind turbines, and so that's kind of done. I mean, he's canceled projects that were already getting built and billions of dollars invested, so I'm not too concerned that that's going to change around, even if it's when we put out an RFP, because again, we have this deadline, 2045, and I want to talk about that, but we ask for technology that is commercially available, that is real, and can actually be up and running in, 3 to 5 to 7 years. Offshore wind, even if there were no other obstacles to get around, I mean, it's complex, it's really expensive, it takes all kinds of permitting and all, those projects on the East Coast, I mean, they've been in the works for decades or over a decade. So we got to move fast. We got to get stuff in the ground now if we're going to hit 2045. And it isn't even just hitting 2045. We have a lot of old generation equipment that we're still operating that we want to retire and give it a rest and put in new equipment that is efficient and is more up to the challenges of running a grid that has a lot of renewable energy on it. So I'm going to just finish this part off and then I'll get to you. The question about, so anyway, things like people talk about, well, ocean wave technology. There has been a project over off of Kaneohe that I think has been in the works since the Nixon administration, and as soon as they, can get that thing to run, and I'm just kidding about it. It's just been a long time, and it's complex, it's expensive, and it's not off the shelf commercially available. That's what we need. We need time-tested, proven technology that we can actually, a solar farm. That is a proven technology, so we could use that. Wind, that works. You can site it okay. Biomass, like H-power, we can use that. So that's when we do an RFP, that's what we're looking for. We're asking for stuff that can get put in fairly quickly and then, be available by 2030 or 2029, something like that. I'm going to hit you first, then you, and then I haven't forgotten about LNG. I think it's going to come back around, okay? Yes, sir.
So my name is Travis Hay. A little bit of backstory on me. I actually work for Next Air Energy.
Oh, okay.
So very familiar with the power generation, power delivery. I worked on the technology side, working with smart meters, tracking electricity, understand like the whole energy island concept and everything else that kind of goes on, especially with the islands here. Texas was a great example of that when the power grid failed. But going back to the power generation, power delivery, there is that starting to focus on SMRs, which are small modular reactors, or like small nuclear reactors. And you can kind of situationally position them around the island if you want to, or in one specific location and kind of scale it out. But do you see that as a potential opportunity to really reduce the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour that a lot of people face with that high cost there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're excited. I'm personally excited about SMRs. I wish somebody would build one and actually get it up and running and we could actually see it working and see what it actually costs to get an SMR up and running on a regular American grid. I keep thinking that's just around the corner, but so it's going to take that and having a bunch of those things run for years before we would get to the point, we, Hawaiian Electric, and I think the state, would get to the point where we'd say, you know what, that looks like a great choice for us. So maybe that's 20 years away, maybe that's 30 years away, but I think more people are talking about that. Just to be clear, there's not a prohibition on nuclear. It can be overcome by, what, a 2/3 vote in the House and the Senate. So it's not an absolute ban. There was a working group that the legislature set up this session, and they met once, or I think I don't know if they're gonna meet again, but there's people talking about it, which is different than we were even a few years ago. So I think we should keep talking about it. I think the biggest, because I'm kind of a history buff, back in the 50s, Hawaii, when you look at Kahe out on the west side there, it's kind of in that valley. You come around the corner and it's in that valley. It was built there in that valley with the anticipation it was going to be what they called an atomic power plant back in the 50s. And if there was an accident, well, it's in a valley and it's away from Honolulu and it'll all blow out to the ocean. So that's why it was sited in that spot. The company commissioned between the 50s and the 70s commissioned 4 studies about looking at the use of nuclear power on Oahu. And each one of those studies came back that at the time, the smallest power plant that you could build was still too big for Oahu. That basically would be the only power plant that on the grid. And when it came off for maintenance, then there was nothing else. I mean, it was that big. They didn't make them small enough for our use. And so we said we would keep looking at it. I have a great collection of headlines from the 60s and 70s where Hawaiian Electric was being yelled at by legislators and the public because we were not putting in a nuclear power plant. They thought that was short-sighted on our part and that we should have been embracing this bold new technology. And then later in the 70s, I didn't see too many of those kind of headlines anymore in the paper. So, yes, your question.
Okay, I was working with a contractor who was rewiring a bunch of stuff. And I said, all right, what Romex would you like me to buy? And he said, don't buy any. What you've got in your attic is better than anything you can buy now. How does that impact what you're doing? Or does it?
No, it doesn't impact what we're doing. And did you feel all right with, I'm not a electrician, I'm the PR guy. So, I offer my professional opinion very guardedly, but you trust this guy and you feel like he,
Well, so far, so good.
There you go. That's how I roll. So far, so good. Yes.
Sounds like comparable to us.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
What percentage of our trash is being used for energy now, and is there any chance we might have enough of the trash being burned and won't need landfills anymore?
I think I'll say this because I know the city knows this. We've done such a great job with recycling on Oahu that there isn't enough trash to keep H-Power going all the time. Put that cardboard in your trash can. It's gonna be. No, I'm just kidding. No, they don't take that. They don't take that in.
So flammable.
Yeah, but they're very specific about what kinds of things they can burn at H-Power. But I think I don't know that it's ever going to get to the point that we're going to not have anything going in the landfill, but everything is supposed to go into H-Power. So if those guys are running short, that means we're doing a good job on taking stuff out of the waste stream. So I guess that's a good thing, right?
I was told that we are wasting, somebody mentioned to me, we're wasting our time by separating our garbage. It should all go in one container.
You know, I thought that too, because I've worked every place else I've lived, they make you put the brown bottles and the clear bottles and the green. But I saw a piece, I think one of the TV stations did it in the last couple of years, and they actually did, I don't think it was undercover, but they actually went out there. And I look, that's not my business. I don't want to tell them how to run their business. I think having guys going through and separating it, that seems very labor intensive, as opposed to, like you say, okay, like they do when you do the recycling over there, right? They make you separate it, right? So, but I think they're manually separating it when it gets to the facility. So it is getting where it's supposed to go, at least according to what I saw.
I still think we should be using blue bins only for the recyclable and then all of our other garbage in the black bin.
You know, I have so much, my hands are full dealing with Hawaiian Electric, so I'm not going to take on the city's waste management issues. But thanks for putting that amount of confidence in me. Yes.
Hi, actually, so I have three things. One, I'm Kelly. I just wanted to say aloha to Brad. I was a really big fan of Windward, and I appreciate the governor bringing you on. Thank you. So just two things. One, this fellow who said that his neighbor hit a main line with a shovel, that's a thing?
Yes.
An electric line with
Yep.
a shovel?
Yep.
Did he, hopefully he made it. I mean, that seems
Yeah.
very shallow for
He's-
a main line.
This particular gentleman is pretty good with being cautious about. He was responsible. Well, he used to be a flight controller, so
I see. Alright.
he knows his stuff. So I wasn't terribly worried about his safety, but I was concerned
That it
for
was that
HECO
shallow.
that
just
we're in a situation where
shovel down.
our last mile infrastructure is not up to the standards HECO wants it to be.
I see.
So my question was really around the long-term plan.
Gotcha.
Oh,
I understand.
but yeah, it is a good message that before you dig, please call.
811, right?
So
Yeah.
just one other quick question, for those of us who don't really know. What is the organizational structure of HECO? I was under the impression it was a cooperative. Can you tell us
Oh,
about
wow.
how it works?
Yes, I'd be happy to. There's three kinds of utilities in the United States. One is called an investor-owned utility. That's what Hawaiian Electric is. People buy shares of stock in Hawaiian Electric Industries. Our company was started, just had our anniversary, 1891. So we started when there was a Hawaiian kingdom, and a lot of people sometimes think we lit Iolani Palace because Iolani Palace was like the first, palace government before the White House. It was electrified, but no, we had nothing to do with that. That was the king who did that. But some business guys down the street thought, hey, this electricity thing, that's just, I don't know, maybe it's a fad, but let's see, maybe we could do something with that. And so they started 5 years after that. After Iolani Palace was illuminated, they started a Hawaiian Electric Company. So we're an investor-owned utility, of which most big cities, there's about 50 of them in the country. The advantage of an investor-owned utility, and we also, we have Hawaiian Electric, and we have two subsidiaries, Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light on the Big Island. We're all known as Hawaiian Electric, but they are three separate, and they're all run pretty much from from here together. So IOU, that's what that's called. Number 2 is a co-op. Kauai has a co-op, Kauai Island Utility Cooperative. I'm proud to say I worked there for 5 years before I moved over to Hawaiian Electric. Co-op, that utility actually used to be an investor-owned utility, and the company that owned it said, we want to get out of Kauai.
Do you see a future of that for HECO?
I see a future of, I think co-ops are terrific. I think they're terrific in the right sized community. I think they're tough on the scale of Oahu, where we have, 300,000 plus customers. The co-op is primarily, if you see it on the mainland, they're primarily rural. And so they were started because the investor-owned utilities back in the 30s, when electricity was really starting to catch on, investor-owned utilities were very focused on the cities, and the farmers outside the city were like, hey, when are you guys coming out here? And they're like, yeah, we're focused on the city, so they started up their own. A co-op has, I think, a lot of advantage potentially for a smaller customer base. Both the IOU and the co-op have pluses and minuses. I think the biggest plus for an investor-owned utility is that we are able to attract capital, which is it's a very capital-intensive business, running a utility, building stuff, buying stuff all the time. Co-ops are limited in the amount of outside capital that they can bring in, but it all depends on how involved the community wants to be in overseeing the utility and involved in that. And then there's also municipal models. Like in Los Angeles, there's the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, which is a huge utility there that's basically run by the city. And I don't think anybody here has ever really been excited about government owning the utility that I've ever heard. But Board of Water Supply is an example of a municipal utility. And Hawaii Kai is actually served by a investor-owned private water company. So I think it ultimately comes down to how well is the company managed, and how well are the customers served. Yep.
So you mentioned 2045 capacity reduction and all that. We've had a number of these meetings with Rep. Ward and then beyond on proposed development in the region, in the area, especially up in the Camilo Nui Valley, where it looks like probably up to 1,000 units. How are you going to manage that when we start adding all this demand?
Well, we're anticipating, not just because of new development, but because of the electrification of a lot of the economy that is still anticipated despite kind of current circumstances. There's an expectation there's going to be a lot more electric vehicles. There's an expectation there's going to be a lot of electrified industry. For example, Matson is going to they're going to replace their cranes with electric cranes. So it's expected that we're going to be seeing potentially twice as much load demand on our system than we have today. And we are planning for that. We have to be ready for that. And it's not just in terms of generation capacity, but it's also in terms of efficiency. It's also in terms of making sure that people understand what the trade-offs are for choices that we do make going forward on things like, and I'm coming back to you now, how we generate electricity in Hawaii. I usually have a slide when I do presentations. We're not connected, I assume most people know, but some people don't know, we're not connected to the continental United States. We're not connected to any other island. Every island has to generate its own electricity. It has to use its own electricity. It's even a challenge sometimes during the day. It was until there was a new battery that went in the last couple of years. It's one of the biggest battery storage units in the country. We had an issue during the day. We produced so much solar energy with all the rooftop solar that we had, we couldn't use it all. And unlike California or Arizona, you can sell it to the state next door. There's no place else for it to go. So we got to balance that constant push and pull, that creation and that demand, and having the battery able to take the excess solar generated during the day, put it in the battery, and then at nighttime, we can use it if you need it, or we usually turn the battery on after the sun goes down and use it for a couple hours. And that means we're not running fuel through a power plant. We're using the battery. So that technology, we're getting very close to we're putting one in over on Maui. That's the kind of technology that's going to help us meet that demand. But yeah, I mean, housing isn't look at all of those new condos down at Kaka'ako. I mean, every time I go down there's a new tower with 200 units, and I'm sure they're all running their AC and they got everything going in there. But that demand really isn't beyond what we've planned for. And so if there was a development that went in the back of the valley there, we'd be able to.
Would you be involved in any kind of environmental impact study on that?
It depends on what. It would depend on how we would serve serve that community. It would also depend on, I think we have sufficient, as I said, we have 4 substations. You know, if we had to build some new infrastructure, then there would be some environmental review on that. But I don't think if you're just talking about a housing development, that we don't have much beyond just hooking them all up, that we would have much environmental review with that. Okay, LNG, I'm gonna get back to you. It only took 40 minutes, so. This is a great group. I really appreciate all these questions. Keep them coming. Joe, we got this space till like midnight, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. All right. Okay, I'll hit you up and then I'll hit LNG. Go ahead.
I'm a contractor, and I think I might be referring to conduits as a little different than you. But I think I'm calling ducts conduits, because I think of the plastic pipe that the wires are going in
Right.
as a conduit, but you refer to that as a duct.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about your wires buried in conduits, that's basically an electric cord that's buried in the ground, essentially. And in my digging throughout the years, I was surprised in Kahala, in one project, basically the electric cord that powered the house was buried about 1 inch under the soil, so it was a little bit of a surprise. That was early on in my career, and since then I've been...
Not a painful surprise, I hope.
No,
okay.
we did not sever it. It was
All right.
so close to the ground,
Yep.
it literally came out. I mean, we could lift it up. It's pretty wild. My job at that house was to dig a trench for the electrician, and we put in a duct so that then when things needed to be replaced, one didn't have to dig the yard up again. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to pass the buck, but Hawaiian Electric's responsibility when they're building, houses is usually it stops with the street, and so then they connect. The homeowner has got to deal with, yeah, and so their contractor is the one who would be burying it, but.
And I want to thank you. Like when the electricity is out in the evening and I go to sleep, it's always on in the morning. So I'm glad that you guys work on.
Yeah, we time it like that. So
thank you.
yeah, Joe.
You guys brought some great props to the town hall that you did back in June.
Oh, you want? I'll give you some props. I haven't forgotten about LNG. We'll get to that. So I do want you to come up here after I'm done, and that will be sometime within the next hour.
Especially showing the bare wire versus what.
Oh, I didn't bring any of those. No. Yeah. So I mean, this is what we're doing as part of the work that we're doing out here, and also other places is how we're trying to prevent potential ignitions for starting a fire. Is yeah, you look up and you see the wires, right? It's for the most part bare wire that you see up on the pole. And one of the things that we're doing, because burying lines underground is super expensive. I mean, everybody says, oh, let's put it all underground, but it's really expensive. And Kevin, as I'm sure you know, it's hard to dig in Hawaii in a lot of places. Yeah, it's all rock. Yeah, it's all rock. And you run into a lot of, when you talk about environmental and cultural issues, I mean, we run into that honestly a lot, even replacing poles where we run into some EV And we got to be really careful with making sure that we're treating that in the way that is respectful but also conforms with the law. And that really actually comes up quite a bit. There was a story in Civil Beat recently about all over in Kailua, especially where all the sandy areas over there, that there's just a ton of kupuna, iwi kupuna that are buried, and it's easy to run into that when people are, yep.
Thank you. As far as you mentioned pole, thank you so much for lifting the pole out in front of my house, putting the new one in the same hole, and not even breaking one leaf off what I refer to as my street trees. Because
Well,
it was like, wow, holy moly.
Thanks. Well, I think those guys have practice, but I'll pass that on. So.
Yeah, and I was also I was impressed where there was no fancy equipment to make sure that the pole was straight, but the person just held a string with a weight on it. And I said, yeah, hey, that is like, whoa.
Yeah, just like the old days, right?
Yeah, he was an old guy.
Yeah, well, that's good. See, those are the guys we're losing. They're retiring, which isn't good. But no, I'm sorry I didn't bring some of the props. But among the things Joe's talking about are this conductor that we're going to be putting up is called covered conductor, and it's basically an insulation that goes on the wire. So if it falls down on the ground, it's not having direct contact with dry grass or leaves or anything like that. And that's been used very successfully in California as a much more cost-effective way to prevent their ignitions. There's also what we're putting up called, and there's some of them on here, where the overhead equipment, sparkless fuses. So when a fuse goes out and up on the pole and near the transformer, a fuse goes out, there's sparks that fall to the ground, and that can start a fire. So we're in the process of replacing all of these fuses, thousands of fuses, with what they call sparkless fuses. So when it goes off, there's no sparks that are created or dropped to the ground. So I do want to show you when you come up here. I've got a couple of very fancy maps that took a lot of time to make. So I want you guys to come up here and look at them. But this is, anybody live on Portlock side? Are you? Okay, great. Well, you've probably seen some work going on in the last couple of weeks. Yes, there you go. We replaced poles. This shows each one of the poles, each one of the fixtures, the fuses, transformers that were all replaced over the last, October 21st. I think they were using a helicopter to do some of the work. So you'll see they also have installed a camera that I think is down this side. It's one of these, you read about these smoke cameras that can detect smoke. They're AI. They can look all across the horizon and they can detect smoke. They immediately automatically call the fire department and us and say, hey, I'm seeing smoke here. And then they check it out and see if it's somebody's emu or if it's actually a fire. And it has been, we've got 180 of these cameras that have been put up over the last year and a half across our 5 islands. And I think the fire departments are grateful to have that resource, and we are too, because they really work. And if you want to fool around and you're looking online, look for something called alertwest.com. They have cameras all along the West Coast, Hawaii. You just click on the state that you're interested in looking at, and you can look at the view from the cameras. You can look at the map and you can click on which area you're interested in, and you can see, and you can move the camera around, you can see what it sees. It's really cool. So.
Is that tied into Hawaii Emergency Management Agency as well?
No, but they'd kind of be secondary. It's the fire departments on each island. And then over here, the other map, and again, I'll have these up here. It says, I thought we had done this already, but it looks like it's scheduled for November. So this is Hahaione. Anybody live in Hahaione? All right, well, you're gonna care about this. So you're gonna see a lot of the work that they're gonna be doing. It says LA's, it's a lightning arrestor. It's something to, make sure that there's no sparks generated by a lightning strike. These are poles that they're replacing. They'll talk about guy wires, are the ones that hold it down so it's not shaking. And these are just, they call them upgrades, or they're just taking the old pole out and putting a stronger one in. So this is some of the work that's going to be done over the next month. Some of it might be done with a helicopter. And whenever we use a helicopter and they're hauling poles, you'll see that we will have people on our team that go door to door in the neighborhood, because people can't be underneath when the helicopter is hauling equipment, so we have to evacuate. And we send, we'll send you notifications and we'll call you, and I mean, it isn't going to be like, quick, you got to get out of here. We'll give you plenty of warning that this is scheduled to happen on Tuesday the 11th at 9 o'clock, and we're going to need you to leave. But then we go around and hit on everybody's door to make sure there's nobody there. So, yes?
It didn't happen in the Fort Lock area. I noticed where the end of the arrow is, it looks like it's all up above Lumahai, where there's a lot of dead grass usually.
Yep.
And those are some poles, right?
Yeah, here's some of the pictures. These aren't the greatest pictures, but here's some supposedly before and after pictures up along. This is up behind, I think that's where you're talking about. So the FAA and all that's up there. And then this is the work that they did to clear that out. These guys take terrible pictures, jeez. So
you're putting in new poles up there?
no, they're up there. We're just clearing out all the brush and trees and making sure this, because you can see on this first one here, the lines are running right through the trees there. And then down here it's cleared, so now it's clear. Yep. Okay, let's talk about LNG. So there's a story in Civil Beat today about liquefied natural gas, and whether we would use that. So most of our power plants run on diesel. Oh, come on, this is all right. No, that's fine. Yeah, I know. All right, I'll send you an email following up on this, because I know you won't want to miss it. But you're welcome. Thanks for coming. So all of our power plants pretty much run on diesel. So that's why your bills go up and down. I mean, it's like everybody remembers back to a gas crisis in the 70s. I mean, we used to have very stable rates really up until the first energy crisis in 1973 and then 79. And then, it's just once the Russians attacked the Ukrainians in 2022, we were actually in a pretty good spot on rates, and then oil prices went up again because of all of the international turmoil. So that's part of why we want to get off of, renewables are not just for clean energy, it's also for stable rates. When a guy builds a solar farm, we sign a 20-year contract, he's going to deliver that electricity to us at a fixed price for 20 years. It's not going to go up, not going to go down. That's the price we're going to pay. Unlike, fossil fuels. And so same with the biomass project, same with, you sign a contract and that's the contract you pay. So that's why projects like that are great projects. But 20 years ago, we looked at doing LNG, which is much more cleaner burning than diesel. And it's also, for the most part, it's not produced by countries that are usually not standing beside us and that we're having a good relationship with. As I think most of us were surprised in 2022 to find out that I think more than half of the oil we were buying in Hawaii was from the Russians. And, I didn't know that, but then after we weren't buying oil from the Russians anymore, then we had to buy it elsewhere. And so I think the idea of buying LNG that is sourced in this country or Canada, so 20 years ago we started looking at, hey, maybe we can convert some of our plants to run on LNG. It's cleaner, it's cheaper, much more stable pricing, and we can use it as what we call a bridge fuel till we get to 2045. We still got to run, it's nighttime. There's no sun shining on solar panels right now. So we need power plants running 24/7, and at night you got to have what we call firm power on the grid. So they're going to be with us. Like it or not, we need to have those resources available. Or even when we have a cloudy day, although I can't remember the last cloudy day around this place. Yeah.
I know the interest in LNG has changed between different local leadership. So
Yes.
Josh Green now, what's
Well, let me go back to Linda Lingle, who is a proud Hawaii Kai resident, I believe. I see her at Costco all the time. So she was opposed to the use of LNG. She thought it was a distraction from getting to our renewable energy goals. But under Governor Lingle, her goal was 70-30, 70% renewable by, I think it was 2040, I don't know if it's 20. But she recognized that some part of that was still going to be probably fossil fuel, and that 70% was going to be renewable. Then, well, after Lingle came Abercrombie, and Abercrombie said, hey, you guys, LNG, get with it. This is what we got to do. It's cheaper, it's cleaner, it's a great bridge fuel. Get on with it. So he ordered us to look at what it would take to convert to LNG. Our company spent probably pretty close to $10 million, the shareholders spent. We studied it for several years. We looked at what it would take. We looked at what it would take to convert our existing generators, all this. And then the 2014 election happened. David Ige was elected governor, and he said, stop doing LNG. We don't want to do that. It's a distraction. It's taking resources away from our renewable energy goals, which are now going to be 100% by 2045. So, and then now we are here today. So we stopped working on it and we focused solely on following the law, which is 100% renewable energy by 2045, which is still where we are today.
It will be 100%.
Well, so then Governor Green has reopened the discussion about looking at LNG as an option for us. And, I think we're absolutely open to looking at that, seeing what that's going to take, but we like to remind people, when you say 2045, that seems like way out there. But when you say 20 years, that seems shorter, and that's where we're at. We're 20 years out now, and it'll probably take 7-8 years to build if you were building a new power plant that was going to run on LNG, all the stuff that goes along with that. So, there's a lot of things that the clock is ticking. So if we're going to do it, and we're really going to do it this time, then that has to be supported by what we say durable public policy, so that the next governor after Governor Green doesn't come along and say, whoa, what are you guys, nuts? LNG? No, we got to not be doing that. And the PUC and legislators and everybody has to be clearly aligned on we've always said that the 2045 goal is good because it gives us, we know what the goal is and we know how much time to get there. The tough part is everybody is not on the same page about how we get there. I think we're absolutely open to looking at what that would take to convert some of our facilities to LNG, what it would cost. It's going to require upfront investment. It's going to be work that is going to be pretty all-consuming, but I think if we can get more stakeholders involved, right now it's been a very high-level discussion, and it hasn't involved people at the local level. It hasn't involved everybody who I think is going to want to have a say about this decision. So I think that's part of the process that has to happen. But we're absolutely open to looking at new options. Yep. Yeah, there is. There's an upfront cost. LNG is cheaper than oil most of the time, and LNG is more stable, although over the last year it's gone up about 40%. There's a lot of utilities on the mainland that use a lot of LNG that are seeing their bills go up, and it's part of it is because of that. But I think over time, the forecast is it will be much more stable than oil, and it's again sourced by countries and more of our friendly people than oil.
So how can Congressman Case use this to help finally maybe push to get the Jones Act?
Oh man, you know what? I can take on LNG, but I can't take on the Jones Act, okay? Tonight as a topic. Yeah, I think that's one of the things they're gonna have to look at that, how that would work.
But that could be part of what he.
Yes, it would be something that he's, and all of our delegations have to look at. Yes, sir.
So why did Governor Lee not want
I think he said it straight up. He said he thought it was that $1 spent on LNG was not going to be $1 spent on renewable energy. And I think he was very, very bullish on renewable energy. And, you know, at the time, I think there were a lot of projects happening. I think he was feeling like we needed to put our stake in the ground and say, this is what Hawaii is going to do. We're going to be, and I still think we can do energy independent. We're not going to depend on anybody else to bring us stuff that we use to make electricity. We can make our own electricity here. I think when you look at geothermal on the Big Island, which everybody's excited about, or not everybody, but most people, we have a lot of amazing natural resources in Hawaii. And I think there was a thought, and I think there still is, that a lot of this we can do on our own. But it's got to be helped by consistent public policy at the federal level and the local level. Look at how many people have rooftop solar? A lot of people do, you know, and that's been helped by state policy, tax credits, regulatory policy. We have 44% of single-family homes on Oahu have solar. Isn't that amazing? No other state is anywhere close to that. So that's a terrific accomplishment, and I think that's kind of where some of the decisions we're looking at that context as well. Yes, sir.
In 2014, he did not know that the Philippines had this equal resources to Kuwait underneath of that. That country is, if they do it by themselves, they're going to run out of LNG field in the place that they're tapping from. 2027. Okay? And they're going to be backed up against the wall. If we only cooperate with them, we could, because they are not going to turn on us like our comrades, okay? Because we have a military presence there, and we have an ongoing friendly relationship as much as any European country. So, I don't know, like, this is a comment on my part. I think we can do two things at the same time. We can push hard for net zero at the same time as cooperating in make sense ways with other countries that have the resources. And I think we're isolated, and there's a difference between us and the mainland where Canada is more attractive, Philippines and other places are more attractive in terms of reliable resources, fossil fuel resources.
Yeah, I was excited about the Canadians, and then I just got a text alert a little while ago that we're mad at the Canadians again now. So, or on trade stuff. So maybe we better look at the Philippines.
Alberta, and
Yep.
it's pretty reliable.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're
Yep.
going to have the referendum next year, so yeah, maybe worth waiting to see.
Yeah, well, it depends on what time it is, right? Or what day of the week it is. Things change very quickly these days, right? So, Joe, are we good on time? You want to wrap?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Let's do a lightning round, yes.
All right, lightning round.
Yep.
So I definitely agree with you on different types of energy creation. You know, as an example, nuclear power being baseline, you have your natural gas that you can ramp up and down. You have your uncontrollable factors like solar and wind that they either produce or don't produce depending on external factors. So I definitely appreciate you talking about the battery storage because that's like a huge component to be able to create that baseline on the energy island we've got going on. So as so many houses have solar on top of them, right now, as far as my research conducts, typically HECO basically pays back the consumer about 3 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour of energy that's exported. However, HECO then charges back the customer about 41 cents per kilowatt hour. So there's that spread of about 37 cents or so per kilowatt hour. Does that go into like a fund, or how is that kind of like tracked as like extra revenue?
Well, you're talking about, I think, the most recent plans which pay less, like, what's it called? Grid,
It wasn't net
Not net metering. So I think 70% of customers are still on net metering. We pay the full rate.
It's like 1-to-1.
Yeah, 1-to-1. If it's 30 cents a kilowatt hour, we pay you 30 cents. That's great if you're one of the people that was an early adopter and put in solar in 2013. You made out great. The only issue with that is, and we talk about this, but it doesn't get much, it's a voice in the wilderness until recently, talking about equity, especially on an island. About $70 million a year of our fixed cost is not picked up by people getting paid net metering rates. That gets picked up by everybody else. It's actually gone down. It used to be closer to $100 million a year in fixed costs of running the utility that the person with solar doesn't pay. The old lady in Waipahu who doesn't have solar has to pick that up. That's an equity issue. Everybody knew at the start that it was an equity issue, but the idea was, and it was a good idea, look, we got to get people to put rooftop solar on. We got to make it as appealing financially as we can, or else people aren't going to do this. And so that was the regulatory position that was taken at the time. I think it was the right one. We had a gold rush of solar. That's how we got to 44%. But the latest programs are more reflective of the reality now. Hey, look, we can't keep paying full retail, or we're just extending this equity issue. So yes, but it doesn't go on a fund or anything. It's just we're not paying as much for what you produce.
So could that extra surplus of revenue that HECO is generating for the overproduction be put into like battery storage to be able to kind of regulate the overall utility? And, you know what I mean? Kind of incentivize people for the greater good, for the greater.
Well, there's an incentive program that we started called Battery Bonus, which got fully subscribed. You're not a fan? No, no. I know there's different opinions on that,
Yeah,
but
if you're not topped off at the time you go for it, then you lose the kind of,
yep.
you know, shady
But-
money day.
Well, but I mean, you get compensated basically. The deal is you agree that we're going to take it out of your battery between 6 and 8, and we'll pay you some upfront money for that commitment. But yeah, if you're not topped off, we're going to come and get it anyway. And but I think it fully subscribed. People thought it was a good program. I think, like everything, this is all new stuff to us and new stuff to the industry. We're industry leading. No other states are doing the kind of innovative, groundbreaking stuff that we've been doing at Hawaiian Electric for the last 15 years. And we've made some goofs, and our regulators have made some goofs, and legislators have, but when you're trying new things, you're gonna, yeah, no, yeah. It's when you're trying new stuff, things sometimes it's not going to work out as planned. But what you got to do is you got to keep, like we tried the time of use program. I don't know if anybody was on that. It didn't result the way we thought it was. It was going to enable people to save some money by doing more work during the day and less at night. But I think the PUC is going to revisit that. I think they should. That's what smart meters help enable, is that you can have adjustable rates depending on what time of day the electricity is used. And I think it will come back and it'll be a stronger program. It'll be more realistic for average people who have a hard time saying, well, I'm just going to turn off the lights at 6 o'clock and go to sleep and not do anything with electricity. Yeah, that was supposed to be the lightning round. Shoot. You tricked me. All right, what else? Who else? Somebody else. Yes?
You mentioned that non-essential workers that PG&E.
I'm sorry, what?
You had mentioned earlier that non-essential workers that PG&E.
Yes.
Why don't you pay the correct rates?
Can't, tough to beat a $50,000 signing bonus and a $50,000 housing stipend.
Even the wages is $82. It's $70.
Yeah, I mean, we have pretty good rate. They're all part of the same union, IBEW. I mean, our guys get paid overtime, and they do pretty well too. But I think when they put it is just PG&E. SEE did it too. There is a My son in college, I think I would say, you know what, son, why don't we think about becoming a lineman at the utility, getting trained for that, because there's great opportunities for local kids, and we are really focusing on hiring locally for all of these jobs that we have, because they're good paying jobs, and they let you stay in Hawaii, and they pay good wages, they have good benefits. I don't think Hawaiian Electric's going anywhere. I wish we didn't have to hire anybody from the mainland. I wish every job we could fill with somebody from here. We're working on that really hard, but these are hard jobs. The lineman jobs, people don't want to go out in the rain anymore. They don't want to work on weekends. It's very physically taxing. I mean, it's tough, strenuous work. They also got to take, you got to take a bunch of tests. You don't just, you have to go through a very, I don't want to say grueling, but it's a tough apprentice program for 3 years before you even get to do anything noteworthy. So we got to keep working harder on that. But I'm hoping our guys will come back. Living in a trailer in Fresno and 110 degree heat, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't, even if you're getting paid a lot. Yeah. So what else? Anything else? Yes?
Some people have been talking about having a separate company to service Hawaii High. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you got a separate water company. How's that work? Well, I don't know. I mean, it's okay, right? You got your water. It's a scale thing. I mean, why would you want to then create all of the infrastructure you need to have a separate entity, for not just the guys doing the work, but all the back office stuff, the high-priced PR talent, that you definitely need to have. It's just, from an efficiency standpoint, it probably doesn't, isn't going to pencil out.
Spectrum's the problem. They openly admit you're at the end of the lines. You're not going to get the same service that they're paying for upstream. So we should all go Starlink.
Yeah.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned Spectrum. Do you have any contacts at Spectrum? We have property, you guys have an easement on it in Kalama Valley. It's called Ka'i Mauka. And there's HECO has stuff there. Spectrum came and put a bunch of stuff there. It's open, it's a hazard, and nobody will respond. I even went to Action Line, and Action Line can't seem to get anybody to respond. So I need to find a high-level person.
When you say it's open, is it
It's open. It's a box with all the
in the ground?
in the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, right there, ground. And right next to it is HECO. And when I called HECO, you guys came out and you go, oh, wow. And you put a nice new lid over it.
On our thing.
On yours.
Yeah,
You guys
okay.
are great. You guys are
Yeah.
great. But
Jim,
then,
if you don't have a contact, I've got a contact that I can see if I can.
it's a hazard,
Yeah.
and people hike there. And
Yeah.
there's no easement with Spectrum. We have no agreement with them. We do with you guys. So, okay, thank you.
We'll connect on that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. I'm gonna be able to get this done.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're getting things done here, Joe, right?
I think we can, time for maybe one quick question and then we'll wrap up.
Yes, Kevin.
I'm very visual. I'm in the landscaping business, and I know Hawaiian Electric has a lot of money. Actually, as a stockholder, I don't want to spend any money on anything, but when I come back from Waimanalo every day, I often go by the entrance to Hanauma Bay, and as I travel down, there's a scenic lookout, and it's great to park there and watch the sunset and see Diamond Head. I'm not an advocate for underground utilities. I know it's expensive, but when I take the picture of Diamond Head, if the overhead lines were underground, it would be $1 million picture. I did one year have my graphics person with Photoshop erase them, and as an example. But anyway, it'd probably only be a couple $1 million.
Yeah, see, Photoshop is much cheaper, Kevin, and that's something that we don't all have to pay for, all right? So I would recommend you continuing to do that. Well, speaking of visual, though, this is a great pic. This turned out bigger than I expected it to, but this is going back into Camilo Nui Valley, right? Isn't that where the farms are? and you're driving along, that's, I think theoretically, yeah, Hawaii Kai Drive still, right? And so we went through there recently and we knocked all of that down, and that is the kind of work that we're trying to keep doing. And I know you folks have talked to, I know Kamehameha Schools has been doing work too on the ground cover, and so I think we're all trying to work together to keep everybody safe, and whatever you can do to support that.
Awesome. Jim, I know people are probably going to have other questions that popped in their head after this.
Standing right here.
What's the best way to get in contact with you or your office?
I have some business cards. They can always go through you and Jillian.
Absolutely.
I know you're not shy about passing on questions, and I'm happy to, if you want to go through Joe, that's probably the best way.
That works.
And then
I've got my cards here as well.
Yep.
You can also
we'd love
visit
to hear from you.
repgideon.com. There's a form on there where you can send any questions or concerns you might have. I'm not the expert, but I know the experts.
Great. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you again, everybody, for coming tonight.
And there's food, right? Or there was?
This is the first, like I said, the first of our Let's Talk Story events. Some other topics we want to do in the future is going to be emergency preparedness with HIEMA and DEM. I'd love to do one with AI. And if any other topics that interest you, please send them my way, and maybe we can work those into our schedule as well.